this episode, Andy and John discuss the Netflix children's movie, The Main Event. Welcome to The Road Home on Film.
All right, folks. Well, welcome back to The Road Home on Film. My name's Andy. I'm coming to you live to tape from the Road Home from Wrestling World Headquarters of the world. And I got John with me. John, you're coming to us from the Satellite World Headquarters, right? How you doing?
So I haven't seen a movie in a month because I am very much a movie buff that I can only watch them in theaters. So I was delighted when this was an enjoyable movie to return to movies with.
Yeah, spoiler alert, we really liked this movie. This movie was good, and we're going to tell you why it's good. We've seen some kids' movies in the whole Road Home from Film, lexicon of episodes or whatever you want to call that, and most of them are really bad, right, John?
Yeah, they're usually not good. Like, the storylines are bad. There's a lot of very weird, inappropriate jokes, and this had some of those, but not as bad as other places.
Overall, this movie reminded me of Looney Tunes. And Looney Tunes has two different kinds of jokes. They have jokes for adults, and then they have jokes that kids think are funny, but they don't really know why. And those are those are the ones for adults. And then it has jokes for kids too. That's what this movie is. It's got jokes for both, and everything in between. It's got the jokes aren't necessarily hilarious every time, but they at least make sense. And that's my biggest thing that I love about this movie is it makes sense. They set stuff up and they knock it down. I can't believe it. I can't believe it, John.
Yeah, I think that my favorite thing is that it very much reminded me of my childhood. And so that was a big takeaway for me. I was like, oh, I can get invested in this because I did grow up watching wrestling. And that's a main feature of this film that, I enjoyed.
Well, John, you want to give us just a little brief background on, how we decided to do this real quick?
So obviously, we like to go to theaters and watch movies, but during the quarantine, everything has been locked down. So unfortunately, that means that the movie that we were gonna review, which was My Spy with Dave Bautista, that was supposed to come out this week, after it's been delayed 5 times, it's now being pushed back again. And so we saw that WWE had a movie coming out on Netflix, and we're like, hey, we both have Netflix. Let's check it out. Let's, do a review because it's WWE related and we do wrestling related stuff. So it was perfect. Made perfect sense.
That's right, John. And, I was sitting down to this thinking this would be the stupidest shit ever. And I watched this movie twice. I watched it once just to see what it was, because, sometimes we have an idea to review a movie and then one of us will watch it and go, oh, there's nothing here, so we can't really review this. And I was 10 minutes into this and I was like, okay, we got lots to talk about with this. This is actually, got some fun stuff, and it's well made. The shots look good. They move the camera a little bit here and there, and there's I don't know, it's a well-made movie. I was very surprised. So, before we get into the plot and everything, just a reminder, folks can follow us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at The Road Home FW. You can follow John at jhat05 on Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow me at Drucifer Tweets on Twitter. So, just want to get that out of the way real quick. John, I guess what we should do is start the way we usually do, is run down who was in this movie and how we thought they did. So you want to take us through some of the cast here?
Sure. The opening, or probably the main character, is a kid named Leo, who later becomes a wrestler named Kid Chaos, and his name is Seth Carr. And you might recognize him from movies such as Black Panther, where he plays the young Killmonger, and a movie called Breaking In, where he plays Glover Russell. So, he's in he's got a bunch of one-offs in TV shows, but I think the Black Panther is probably the main one that everyone's probably seen him in, but didn't realize that they'd seen him in it.
Yeah, everybody out there's listening to this, and they want us to make the joke. But guess what? Dana Brooke already made it, so we can't make that joke, all right? And, she posted earlier today or maybe late yesterday, like, congratulations on all these people that were in this movie, and she tagged Leo Rush. So, very funny.
I saw that and I was very confused.
I think she's just trying to be funny. So,
or maybe he was the one under the mask in the matches.
I mean, that could be. That could be.
He's not credited on the casting, but it's possible.
That's interesting. We'll have to find out. Or just review it and move on and never think about it again. That's probably a little more accurate. But how'd you think he did? I thought he did pretty good.
Yeah, I thought he did pretty good in his first starring role. Nothing to complain about. I thought he did a fine job.
Well, he had more than one emotion to emote, and he did that. Like, his face worked. Like, he did facial stuff. Like, make it like something bad would happen, and his face would change into, like, a face that you might make when something bad happens. And then when something good happens, his face would do the opposite. It was crazy.
Yeah, and when he was confused, he knew how to be confused. So, yeah, he had all the emotions, I thought.
I couldn't believe it. So he did great. Who else was in this?
There is the actor named Adam Haley. He plays Steve, the dad, in this film. And you might have seen him in such TV shows as The Mindy Project. One of my personal favorites, Happy Endings. It did not get enough credit. And he was also in the recently released Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, I saw Sonic the Hedgehog. He was like this flunky that got yelled at, I think, by Jim Carrey, I think is what happened.
No, he got yelled at by James Marsden. He was like the lackey other cop in town in Green Hills.
Oh, that's right. He was an idiot. I remember. So this is my one issue with this movie is that the storyline with the father sucks. And it is not well done. It's confusing, and the father is garbage. It's like the director, right before all of his scenes, the director said, okay, and shouted like 30 different conflicting directions at him, and then said, act. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, because he just knew how to look mopey and look at the ground and deliver his lines very like, oh, this is what we're doing. And I'm like, does he have any other? While the kid could evoke all the emotions, Dad could not evoke more than two.
Yeah, well, he was trying to do them all at once or something. Like I said, I don't get it. He was terrible. So, that was my one beef is that we had the storyline that's got a few kind of, ins and outs to it that we don't find out what's really going on till later. And it's really not a big reveal, and it doesn't really have anything to do with anything. So that whole dad's like thing could have just been cut out of the movie, and I would have been perfectly fine with it. But is that how you feel?
Just cut the dad character out altogether. Yeah. I mean, yeah, honestly, it would have worked. They could have just had him and Grandma, and it would have been fine.
Who played Grandma?
Grandma was played by, I am going to butcher this name. It is Tichina Arnold? Okay. I don't know. It's like Tichina. Tichina.
I thought she did a pretty good job, man.
She did do a really good job. You might recognize her from such TV shows as Everybody Hates Chris, but mostly probably she was in Martin.
That's right.
And then if you want a good indie movie that she's in, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. It's a good movie that she's in as well.
I mean, she clearly was a professional actor. Her job was to kind of be the surrogate parent for the child, Leo, and she was also there for comic relief. And although I don't think all the jokes were funny, they weren't meant for me, and I guarantee you little kids and parents alike would have thought a lot of the jokes she was involved in were very funny.
Yeah, because she was representing like the overachieving mom or the parent that, I don't know, wants to be popular, but everyone's like, yo, you're too old to be cool.
Well, we'll find out. She gets a really cool story arc that we end up talking like the very last scene of the movie is all about wrapping up her thing. So, well, who else do we got, John?
One last main actor would be Ken Marino. He played Frankie Sampson's manager, and you will recognize him from movies / TV shows, Wet Hot American Summer, Party Down, and he was in Mastermind, as well as I think he's in pretty much everything. You just don't realize he's in everything.
He is a comedian who got his break on the TV show The State. It was an MTV show that was a sketch comedy show to kind of compete with SNL and Kids in the Hall and Mr. Show. And The State is a hilarious show. His main guy, he was one of the most popular characters on that show because he played a skit where he would come to a party. All right. And everyone would be all excited and they'd be like, oh my God, is he going to say it? Is he going to say it? And then you're like, well, what's he going to say? And he'd walk over and look at the the spread and be like, that punch right there looks pretty good. And everyone's getting all excited. And they're like, well, is he going to say? And he'd say, it's so good, I want to dip my balls in it. And that was his catchphrase. So then the skit is that people would invite him to parties to try to get him to say it. And then they would just kind of just stretch it, and then finally he'd say it. And it was so fucking funny. So that guy I've always loved. Wet Hot American Summer's awesome. Party Down, a very, very unsung comedy series that is kind of hard to find. But if you can find it, it is awesome. It's got everybody who's a popular comedic actor in the kind of I don't know, I guess the mid card of comedic acting is the whole cast of Silicon Valley is pretty much on that show. And there's a ton of actors and actresses on that show that are very funny that you'll be like, oh my God, that guy. Oh my God, that guy. It's great. The half the cast of Parks and Recreations is on that show too, I think.
Yeah, I know Adam Scott is on that. I don't think Aubrey Plaza is, but it feels like she would fit in with that cast very well.
It's the same exact style of humor. So now, John, there's also a bunch of wrestlers in this, right?
There is. And so I was debating whether I included this wrestler in the actor portion or in the wrestler portion. But Mike, the Miz Mazzana, is also in this. And he is well known for such roles as Jack Carter in the Marine 3, 4, 5, and 6. He's also astonishing Adam Dung on Southpaw Regional Wrestling. And I think what he's probably most well known for, though, is his stint on The Real World.
Yeah, that and wrestling, he's also known for that. But yeah, he's kind of like the host of everything. We'll talk about that. I thought he did a great job, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the practice. He hosted the Diva Search, back when he first started in WWE. So he's got hosting chops.
I feel like he hosted the newest season of Tough Enough, too.
Yeah, and he's hosted some of the Challenge reunions on MTV. So, I mean, he's good at hosting.
Yeah, and he's a rapper now. So, I mean, what is there in this world the Miz can't do? Nothing.
I don't know. Maurice was smart for snatching him up. She was like, I'm going to get me a man that can do literally everything.
Man, he is punching way above his weight class with that. I mean, good for him, man. That is amazing. So, who else is in this?
We also had, just starring as themselves, Kofi Kingston, Sheamus, Corey Graves, and Renee Young.
Sort of as themselves. We'll talk about that when we get into the plot and everything.
Yeah, and then wrestlers that were playing characters that are not themselves. We had Eric Bugsy, who was playing Big Billy Beaver, which I know you're a big fan of Eric Bugsy, right? Is that his name?
Oh, yeah. Me and Eric Bugsy go way back. I mean, he's been on the show 3 times. I'm surprised you don't know who he is.
Oh, well, my bad. We also had Otis playing a character named Stinkface.
Bugsy's never been on this show. I don't know who the hell he is.
He's the rock and roll guy.
Oh, I didn't recognize him because this must have been filmed a long time ago because he got fired for being injured, so he's no longer with NXT.
I think he is. I think he got another name change though, because when I was doing research for this, it looks like he's still there, but he's got a different name now for like the 5th time.
Oh, okay. Well, he was like super over there for a minute, you know?
Yeah, doing the like one-man rock and roll band gimmick thing.
It's a one-man band.
We also had Mia Yim playing the character Lights Out Leslie. We had Baba. Oh God, if I butchered the other name, this is the one that's really going to get butchered. Babatunde Ayabuzi.
You know that's a Polish name too, by the way. That guy's Polish, and this is the guy that plays the big bad guy, and he is like an NXT signee that just really hasn't like debuted yet.
Yeah, and so he's playing Samson, and then the person who I thought stole the show, Keith Lee, playing the wrestler Smooth Operator.
So Keith Lee has a singing, like a lounge singer gimmick, and every time someone says anything to him or like something great happens, he'll like he wins something and the Miz gives him the mic and he goes, "You made a great decision, Miz." You know, it's really funny. It reminds me of the female love interest in MacGruber, and she would do that a lot in that movie. So
yeah. So there. Let's see, because usually we talk about the wrestlers and our impact with them. Is there any one out of the 9 that you'd like to call out and like kind of speak to?
Keith Lee was awesome. He was the best thing in the movie. If you're a wrestling fan, there was like 2 or 3 things. If you're let's just say if you're like a shitty smart mark, you're gonna love Keith Lee in this movie, and you're gonna love maybe Otis, and you're definitely gonna love Renee Young and Corey Graves for sure.
Yeah, because I thought the rest of them were kind of like Mia Yim. They didn't really do too much with. Big Billy Beaver, they didn't do too much with. But and Sheamus, he was weird. He was not the normal Sheamus that we're used to.
Well, Otis had the best punchline in the whole movie, and we'll get to that. He has there's a joke that gets set up with him that is just so funny. So anyway, well, John, anything else you want to talk about till we get into this? Or
do you have a favorite Miz match?
Oh, yes. Gosh, I think it's a 4-way. And it was like either for the Intercontinental title or for #1 contendership. It was like The Miz, Cesaro, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens in like a 4-way on like Raw or something like that. And it was fucking tremendous. I'm a big fan of The Miz. I think he's a great wrestler. I think he gets a lot of shit for not being a high-risk, fancy wrestler. But he wrestles the WWE style. What do you want from him? I think he's great.
Yeah, I think he's very smart, and he's not shy about pointing it out that like he hasn't been injured in almost his entire tenure with WWE. He's only been injured like maybe once or twice.
Well, he bounced his head off the concrete at WrestleMania against John Cena. That was probably the one I think of with injury wise.
Yeah, but for the most part, he's like, you guys are all mad because I'm, not doing flippy stuff, but I'm also the guy who's had like a 10-year run of not, really being hurt too much. Because, like you said, he's adopted the WWE style, and I think a lot of people, especially like the smart marks, don't appreciate that someone can make a living off of a WWE style match.
That's true. My only thing with Miz, I wish he would either need to wrap up this thing with Daniel Bryan, or he needs to quit doing Daniel Bryan's moves. One or the other, because that's so stupid. They never had that blow off, really. It's just still going on forever. And it was all supposed to happen like before Daniel Bryan wrestled The Fiend, and then that whole story got screwed up. Anyway, we're not here to talk about WWE, really. So what else, John? Anything else before we get started? You got anybody you want to call out?
Not really, because all the NXT guys, I'm not super familiar with them outside of NXT. I guess Keith Lee, I think his He was in that War Games match back at not Survivor Series, at NXT War Games this past year. I thought he did a pretty good job in that. Didn't he do like a moonsault off the top of the cage?
Probably. I don't know about that. I don't remember seeing that, but he's fantastic though.
Yeah, for his size and like the things he's able to do, they're just super impressive. And I think he's gonna go real far in WWE once he.
He's like 40. He may be older than that actually. He's old as fuck. And
well, hopefully he gets main roster here soon.
I think he will. So, anyway. All right. Well, so let's set this up. This movie's called The Rookie of the Year. I mean, the main event, excuse me. It's a different movie, I think. Pretty much the same movie. But yeah, so we start off with our hero, Leo. Leo's a little kid. He's 11 years old. He drops an elbow on The Miz with his dad counting the 3 as a ref. But guess what? As most of these movies start, this is a very formulaic movie, but they do it well. It starts with a dream sequence. Oh, it's not real. And his grandma wakes him up for the dream. And Leo and his grandma are both humongous marks. John, what'd you think of Leo's bedroom?
So when I first saw his bed, I was like, holy shit, I want that bed in my house, like in my bedroom right now. It's like a wrestling ring, where like they literally have 3 ropes like hanging off the bottom, and then like the headboard is 3 ropes. I'm like, this is a sweet ring bed. And then like when they pan around the room and it's just all these wrestling posters, honestly, I started having flashbacks of like my childhood. Once me and my brother got separate bedrooms, I like lived it up and put all like the wrestling stuff up. And I subscribed to WWE Magazine back in the day, or WWF Magazine. And I like had huge stacks of the magazine. I was like, this is my childhood with all the wrestling figures everywhere. And yeah, I could just keep going on, but I'll stop.
Well, it's just one of those things where you see his bedroom and you get super jealous, right? I mean, you're just like, man, that looks awesome. It reminds me of Hook. We're supposed to feel sorry for that kid. This is a different type of movie, but in Hook, his bedroom is fantastic, and we're just supposed to feel sorry for him. But in this case, we're not supposed to feel sorry for him. Now, I notice, that, or the deal is that Leo's a huge mark. Now, Grandma is a huge mark, but there's like 2 reasons why she's a mark. Do you know what they are, John?
One, because she is thirsty.
That is one, yes.
And I think the other is I don't know. I think she's just trying to relate to her grandson.
You nailed it. Absolutely. And the acting portrays that. That's one of the reasons why I love some of the characters in this, is that they do what the story says. And if you watch a movie like Doolittle, for example, nothing matches up. Nothing, a lot of these kids movies we've seen, playing with fire, those parts don't match up. What you're hearing, what you're being told, and what the actors are doing do not match. So I love this grandma lady, and it's a little confusing though, the family dynamic, because they don't just really spell it out at first. But anyway, the kid's dad.
She looks very young to be a grandma, by the way.
Right. That was confusing to me as well, because I thought she was his mom. But it's confusing because there's different races in this family, and people's ages are kind of weird, and I don't know, we'll get to it. But so we're introduced to Dad. He's awkward and weird. And then Grandma is on Instagram, and she's in love with Kofi Kingston. Dad works 2 jobs. And the storyline is the only thing in this is like the one storyline that doesn't work in this movie, because it's just they screw something up, like a continuity thing with this, and then it just doesn't quite work, because every time we see the dad, it's almost a different story that we're worried about. I don't know. It's weird. We'll get to it.
It's like a side plot that doesn't mesh with the main story at all.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be there, but I get it. They want to add some emotional meaning to the end of the movie, and that's what this is all about. So, but Leo gets toothpaste on himself because he's a little bit of a doofus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so up at school, Leo meets up with his 2 buddies, and they start saying all kinds of smart mark shit. You love this, didn't you, John?
Oh my God, I related to his buddy. It was the little Indian boy. Razaz? Or
I
you like?
I didn't get their names, so I don't. The two friends and the crush, I don't know what their names are. So we'll just.
So the little chubby white boy is Caleb, and the Indian kid is Rayaz, and then the love interest is Erica.
All right,
But
I already forgot.
but the Razaz kid, he starts like going on like, oh, did you see what WWE advertised? They're making a big announcement. I hope it's for like to get a job. I want to be the director. And, I want to do all this. I had so many like great visions. I'm like, this kid is such a mark, thinking like, oh, I'm going to come in. I have better ideas than Vince McMahon. And I was like, I've never related to a movie character more than I do this little child.
One of his ideas is he wants to film a match complete with drones, and I'm thinking, yeah, Matt Hardy already did that, first of all. But I mean, so if you want to watch this and you want to be a shitty smart mark and pick it apart and be a dick, you can. Some of the stuff they say doesn't make any sense. Like, for example, the kid's like, I wonder who directs that. And the guy's like, oh, it's Vince McMahon. And he's like, oh, well, that's Vince McMahon isn't the director of Raw. So, I mean, that's not right either. But guess what? Who fucking cares? This is kids having fun, just talking, and they're on their way to school. So Leo, gets bullied when he's backing down from joining the wrestling team. They had the scene where there's like the little thing hanging up, the little list, and he's, are you going to sign up? And here comes the bully kids, and the bully kids are like, oh, you're too much of a pussy, you little bitch, and he backs down like a pussy, like a little bitch, right? Now, then we also get introduced into another side character, supportive female smartass teacher. She sends the bullies to the office, and she always has some smartass remark throughout the movie. So.
Yeah, and the reason the kids started bullying him so much is because they knocked his backpack off, and his notebook of him being he had a drawing of him being the WWE champion, and they were like, oh, look at this loser who wants to be in WWE. Yeah. So that's why they were picking on him so much.
Yeah, and it's weird because they don't pick on him because wrestling isn't cool. They pick on him because they don't like him, pretty much, right? So, I mean, like, they aren't like, oh, wrestling's, stupid. That's fake shit. None of that's in there, which I like. It's like one of my favorite things about the Star Trek: The Next Generation, this is kind of off subject, but right on point, is that whenever there's a problem on Star Trek: Next Generation, they don't have to spend half the episode convincing everyone to believe that this problem's going on. They just immediately accept it and move on. Like when there's there's a spatial anomaly that's frozen time, and they're like, oh, really? Okay, how do we fix that? They don't go, oh, that's bullshit. And like most movies nowadays spent half the fucking movie or half the TV show trying to convince everyone that something's real. So I like that they don't put any of that bullshit in there. So anyway, so Leo is a huge Kofi Kingston / New Day mark. He's also a huge mark for his crush. You said Erica is her name, but I'm just going to call her the crush. So the bullies chase him on bicycles, and Leo ducks into an estate sale and runs into a second floor room that's filled with pro wrestling memorabilia, including a mysterious mask hidden in a secret compartment. What did you catch? Okay, so the bullies get kicked out. They run in after him. They get kicked out, and then the curator gives Leo the mask. And tell me a little bit about the mask, John.
So it is hidden in a secret compartment inside of another like structure, and he bumps into it, and it's inside of a box, and it smells like what did somebody say? It smells like farted on couch. And I feel like that was one of the references, like old man balls.
It smelled authentic, is what one guy said.
Yeah, and you kind of like, and this is another like props to the Leo kid. He initially, when he opens the box and like goes to put the mask on, he makes this facial expression of like, oh, like he gets a whiff of something, but he doesn't acknowledge it. And then when the curator, as you said, comes in and he like says, oh, it smells so bad in here. He's like, oh yeah, this is like a musty smelling mask. And but it's like an old luchador mask with just different patches kind of stitched together. That he's like, oh, well, this is pretty dope. Can I have it? And the guy's like, sure, but don't tell anyone.
Well, then And then he says, how about that Ric Flair robe over there? And the curator's like, don't push your luck, kid.
I was wondering if they were going to acknowledge the Ric Flair robe, because they around the room they had a couple of different like old wrestling like inspired things, and like I saw the Ric Flair robe in the background. I was like, I wonder if they're going to acknowledge this, because it's cool. It was pretty dope. There's like an Andre the Giant picture. I'm trying to think of what else was in the room, but those were like the three main features of the room.
Yeah, a lot of it was super old too. So like, there was a signed picture, like poster of a match I've never even heard of the people. And usually it's like before Lou Thesz, like is it before that. So anyway, well, yes, the mask smells terrible. And guess what, John? That thread of the mask smelling terrible begins now and doesn't end until the end of the movie. Everyone who's around the mask notices the smell. Wow! Continuity. Yeah. I can't believe it. I was so surprised because I figured that will get dropped immediately, but no, it's everyone notices the smell, and it's a running joke throughout the movie. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because there was like a scene like an hour later in the movie where they reference it, and like even I had forgot, like, oh yeah, the mask smells bad, and then they make a joke about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, the mess does smell bad.
I can't believe it. Yeah, they set stuff up and they knock it down. It's crazy. So Grandma and Leo, they watch SmackDown together, and Grandma
they're supposed to be watching Monday Night Raw. They're like, before the kid goes to school, they're like, all right, are we in for Raw tonight? And they're like, yeah, hell yeah. And then they get to school and they're talking about the Kofi or the New Day versus Usos that night. And then they get home and they're watching the New Day versus Usos, and it's Friday Night SmackDown. And then they cut away and come back, and it's Becky Lynch on the Raw set. And I was like, okay, so we're good for most of the continuity, but not when it comes to like the actual WWE programming.
Yeah, but you have to be picky to find this stuff. You know what I mean? Like the average person's going to watch this and not notice any of that stuff. So, yeah, they watch Raw, SmackDown, whatever, and Grandma is like, the basement's flooded. She is horny as fuck for the New Day, right? And Leo's like, you're weird, Grandma, and she's like, yeah, I want to fuck him. And she, and he's like, you're so weird. And that joke goes throughout the movie as well.
Because she's like trying to get off to his T-shirt that has Kofi on it, and like even Dad's like, can you calm it down? Like this is getting uncomfortable.
So Leo wishes he was strong like Kofi, and it's like a little music plays when he says that, and that means something, It's like, okay, cool. So Dad comes home, and he stands there watching for a second. He's not interested, but Leo does point out that his dad taught him something. And this is, again, why this storyline is like fucking shoehorned into this, and it doesn't need to be here. He taught him that every wrestler has a weakness, all right? And it's weird because he says, hey, Dad, remember when you told me this? And he's like, oh, yeah, I guess I did tell you that. Huh. And then Miz announces an open tournament winner, or an open tournament. The winner gets $50,000 and a contract, and it happens to be in Leo's hometown.
Yeah, and then the next confusing part happens, because as Miz is announcing this, they like cut to a promo of Samson and his manager like announcing that they're going to be there. And I'm like, wait, if this is like open casting call, how is Samson already on like cutting promos?
Well, again, like I said, if you want to pick on this, you can. But, Samson is a gigantic wrestler that's played by Bob.
Nailed it.
And his manager is Ken Marino. And he has some goofy Frankie something or other. And it doesn't matter. We're going to call him Ken Marino. So, so they appear on the screen and say they're going to be in it. And we are introduced to our bad guys in the movie, which is great. And then there's a strange conversation about food with the dad where he's like, hey, where's my bread? And the grandma's like, oh, I threw that bread out. It was stale. And he's like, oh, well, I guess I have some emergency sandwiches. See you later, movie. And he goes in the kitchen. I know.
Yeah, and this is after he's worked, like the graveyard shift for Lyft and then at his mechanic shop. All because his wife has disappeared. Yeah?
But that all those details that you just mentioned, you cannot tell me until the end of the movie. You know what I mean? It's really hard to like pick all that stuff up. They don't just come around and say it, which I wish they would.
They subtly drop it because initially I thought that the mother had just died because, they didn't mention her at all until there's like after the stale bread conversation, grandma and dad are having a conversation in the kitchen, looking for the stale bread and the makeshift sandwiches. And he's like, yeah, I just don't know what to like tell Leo about his mom. Like, and the grandma's like, well, she's my daughter too, but like, she makes bad decisions. It's like, oh, so she's not dead.
It's like they're missing something. Like there's like 2 or 3 scenes missing, and this movie is like an hour and 46 minutes long. So like I said, if you cut that all out, they would have ended up with a 90-minute movie that would have been perfect. So I just don't get this whole storyline, but we'll get into it more. So Leah's up in his room. And he puts, I missed this. All right. So grandma and dad, they bitch. Grandma bitches at dad for failing to discuss Leo's mom with Leo. And she's constantly giving him shit, but not really helping him any, I mean, she does help because she takes care of Leo, but she's not like she's like, hey, you need to do this. And then she won't like help him with it. Anyway, let's see here. So she also introduces a new element saying that dad needs to stop working on that car, which is super confusing because he works at a garage that's established. But every time he's working on a car, he's working in their garage. But that's not the garage he works at. But he's also a Lyft driver and his bread's stale. I don't know. It's weird. So, but the point is that Leo overhears this, and he overhears dad saying that they need money or they're going to, quote, lose the house, which grandma was like, I'll give you the money. He's like, no. So they got a solution to their problem right there, but they choose not to do it so that Leo can do all this stuff. All we needed to do was have grandma be the main parental figure, right? And then, she is losing her house, and that's our altruist, Three Stooges plot, because that's always the Three Stooges plot. So it's a woman can't pay her rent and they have to go help and get the money. So, and then they beat each other up on the way. So that's all we needed, but we gotta shoehorn this dad in there. So, but this is the big scene of the movie where everything changes because Leo is in his room with the mask. And he puts it on. He takes a deep breath, too, because it stinks so bad. And he puts it on, and it turns him into a promo-cutting smartass with a deeper voice. He does a standing triple moonsault, and we get a discovering superpowers montage where he, like, super kicks a tree over, and you see him do a bunch of different things. He also does a Google image search of the mask and discovers that it's been missing for 50 years, and it's fucking magic. But it only works on worthy people, which is something that doesn't pay off. That one doesn't pay off, which is shitty. So so
it's like the sword in the stone. Like yes. Only certain individuals can will the power of it.
I should have left that part out. It didn't matter, and that would have added tension to the end when the bad guy gets the mask and tries to put it on. But they decided to go the other way with that. So what'd you think of the initial putting the mask on thing? I mean, you were assuming this was going to happen, right? I mean, what'd you think of all that?
Yeah, it almost seemed like it turned him into Spider-Man, essentially, because at one point, like, the bookshelf or the dresser starts to fall over on him, and he catches it with just his fingertips. So I was like, all right, this is obviously it's a kid's movie, and I'm like, it is a little over the top, but it works. It establishes that he now, this scrawny little kid, has superpowers that makes him pretty much invincible.
It's a lot like, Rookie of the Year, where he breaks his arm or something, all of a sudden he can throw 1,000,000 miles an hour, right? So then he can play with the big boys, and that's kind of what we got, where we're headed with this plot. We're back in school, and the bullies beat up on Leo's friends, and he stands up to them, and he's like, fuck y'all, I ain't no bitch. And what he does is he turns the lights off. We do lights out. So not only does he have, wrestling powers, like he can do moonsaults, but he can also do lights out. I wonder if he can summon fire, like some of the wrestlers.
I think it's lightning, probably lightning.
So he does lights out. And while the lights are out, he beats up all the
The bad guys.
bullies, yeah, and then hangs them by their underwear from the lockers. So supportive female smartass teacher shows up to send everyone to the principal, including Leo. And Leo's like, "Where's the principal office? I don't even know where that daggone thing is. I'll tell you what."
But luckily, the bullies are helpful, and they say, "Oh, it's the second door down on the left before the bathroom."
Now we get one of my favorite jokes in the movie, because we see that the dad has picked up Leo from school and he's bitching him out like, "Why are you doing all this?" And we get this nice conversation between them, and the camera is doing the reverse shot where you just see each other's face, and then we see all three, or two of them, the two shot where they're both in the same camera, and there's a guy in the back seat because he's driving Lyft, and he's like makes a comment about the conversation. That was funny. I like that.
Yeah, that's how hard up times are. The dad has to do Lyft rides and pick his son up from school.
So Leo hangs out with his friends, and he sees Samson with Ken Marino are entering the tournament. I see that's where this happens. So it didn't happen earlier. It happens here. So because they're watching SmackDown Raw.
I don't know. I could have swore there's still like a promo though, and I'm like, how is this promo happening?
Well, whatever. People can watch it and figure out who's right and who's wrong, because that's what this is all about, John. That's what it's all about.
I know that I like to be the right one, and you like to be the wrong one. It's fine.
Oh. So then we get a montage of Leo trying to get his own shit, basically, right? He's trying to find a gimmick. We see him impersonate many wrestlers, and when he does The Rock, he stops in the middle and goes, "Oh, I can't pull that one off because he's so famous, And what does he end up settling on, and what do you think about this little montage here?
Is this where he becomes Kid Chaos?
Yeah. Well, sort of. No, this is where he finds his gear, and he tries out a bunch of stuff. He doesn't become Kid Chaos till he gets to the tournament in the next scene.
Yeah. He's still at home. I thought, it's a good little montage. I don't know. I didn't have too much thoughts on it. Sorry.
Well, his gear is shitty, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's an 11-year-old child. What do you expect him to? He's not a seamstress.
And this is much like. Go ahead.
But he's really good at drawing. So it's kind of like, it's slightly confusing because his artwork is phenomenal for an 11-year-old.
He traces.
He might, but then all I can find is a musty old T-shirt and his musty mask and some old tattered gym shorts.
Yeah, he's dressed like Kevin Owens, so he's basically just wearing Kevin Owens gear, so which is awesome. But all right, so Leo arrives at the tournament. Now we have to establish here that no one knows that he is Kid Comet, even his friends, even though they kind of
Chaos.
Kid Chaos. What a shit, that's somebody else. Kid Chaos. So because and the parents don't know, the grandma doesn't know, so no one knows he's at this tournament, right? So he arrives, he puts the mask on outside because he arrives on his bike, and everyone sees him and they know he's a kid. But when he puts that mask on, no one has a clue, right? Which is pretty funny.
No idea.
So there's some fat guy, white dude, Viking wrestlers, and they're like, "You stupid kid, get the hell out of here. Now I'm hungry." They make a little fat guy joke. Good times.
So he don't Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, that's what he's. And he goes, "Now I'm hungry because I mentioned food." And by the way, do you know what Chuck E. Cheese? You know what his full name is?
No, I don't. What is it?
So it's Charles, first of all, and then the E stands for entertainment, John. So his name is Charles Entertainment Cheese. Just a little nod out there to Chuck E. Cheese.
My middle name is Charles, so if you want to start calling me Chuck, I guess that can be a thing.
All right, Chuck. So Leo,
I don't like it. Let's stick with Jow.
So he dons the mask and enters the tryouts. He runs into this lady when he's signing up, who's just a smart ass bitch. That's pretty funny because she's like, "I need a ring name," and she's a total bitch. And he's like, "How about Kit Kat?" And she's like, "Great, I don't care." So he likes Kit Kat.
She's like, "You're little. You're not gonna make it far in this biz." But nobody asks for his ID. No one's checking registration.
Yeah, these are the details you can't worry about in this movie, So some of the other competitors are wrestlers, actual wrestlers. We mentioned some of those before, Mia Yim and Otis and Keith Lee. And Leo meets Keith Lee playing Smooth Operator, has this lounge singer gimmick. The Miz is our host, and there will be 3 weeks of matches, and the final is a steel cage match. Samson arrives, and we get he's a giant dude who won't stop eating jokes. That's kind of his gimmick. And, and Ken Marino talks shit to everybody. But so this is not a match here, right? This is some kind of like tryout to be in the matches. Is that right?
This was very reminiscent of, you remember when NXT was on USA originally? And it was like wrestlers and then like real main roster wrestlers, and then they had like their trainees, which are the NXT guys. On the shows every week on USA, they would do different stupid things like this, where they would do like, who can throw a keg the furthest? Who can do this obstacle course the fastest? Like, who can pull this rope the furthest? And so I was like, oh, this is very classic NXT of doing real stupid stuff that does not make any sense to professional wrestling.
I love this scene, though, because it's well made. It's like, you see across the screen this, like, text that says barrel toss, and some guy says it like that. And all of a sudden, the wrestlers are throwing the barrels, and we see Samson throw 2 of them at once. And then, of course, Kid Chaos is chucking them further than everybody because he's magic, right? And then we have beat the dummy, where guys, like, flip off the top rope and squash the dummy. But what happens? John Samson doesn't want to do that, huh?
No, he doesn't want to go to the top rope, and we're not really sure why. I think it's because he's just so tall and big that he's worried that if he gets to that top rope, it's going to break on him. And so he's just a little nervous.
I wonder if something his dad said will pay off later in the show. I guess we'll find out. And that actually happens during the agility test. Agility test. Samson won't go to the top rope. Leo actually does the greatest wrestling move of all time, where he jumps from one turnbuckle to the other. That's one thing I've never seen in pro wrestling. Maybe one day.
I can't wait to see Alex Zane try that once we get back to wrestling.
Smooth Operator sings. It's hilarious. And, because he gets selected and the Miz is like, oh, Smooth Operator's next guy. And they give him the mic and he's like, this was a great decision. It's like Aaron Neville or something. It's really funny.
And Miz is like, don't do that again.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, don't go into business for yourself, kid. You're 10 years older than me. But Leo moves on in the tournament, and he rips off Bret Hart. What the fuck? Get your own shit, kid. Did you catch this?
I did. He said he's going to be the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And no one called him on it.
That's shocking.
And this child wouldn't know who Bret Hart is, though. So, I mean, I guess it makes sense.
And part of this is the fun of this is one of those jokes that's meant for both people. So the kid will be like, oh, wow. The kid watching this, will be like, wow, that's a really cool saying. And then the parent can say, oh, well, actually, Bret Hart said that. And all of a sudden, you've opened up a conversation between a parent and a kid about Bret Hart. I love these parts of this movie, like those kinds of things, because I was just sitting there thinking, man, this movie is great when it comes to, combining or allowing people to kind of bond over wrestling. That's what the movie's all about. I really like that part. Did you catch all that?
Yeah, and I thought, like, even if you aren't a fan of wrestling, I think that this is still a good enough, like, family movie that you could watch it, and then it's almost like a gateway drug into wrestling, I think. Like you watch this, and you're like, oh, but what is on SmackDown? Because Mom's going to be like, oh, they talked about Big E's pecs bouncing. I'd like to watch that.
She likes that a lot. That's her favorite part, quote unquote. So.
Me and Grandma have different favorite parts,
yeah,
Dad.
That's right. Yeah, we get the no homo part where the dad's like, standing there and the little kid's like, Grandma's talking about New Day and how awesome they are. And the kid's like, well, that's not my favorite part, so no homo, which is great. Thank you, movie. Thanks for that. That's one part that needs to get cut the fuck out of the movie. Anyway, so Grandma catches Leo sneaking in, and he reveals the magic mask, his motivation for entering the tournament, which is money. So, and he overheard the conversation, and he has this empty thought that, again, doesn't need to be in the movie. He thinks it will bring his mom back, and they agree not to tell his dad, which is weird.
We're going to keep this secret from your dad. He's got the weekend off, and he wants to hang out, but let's keep it a secret.
Right. It's so weird. Get the dad out of this movie. So, all right, so we're back at school, and Leo uses the mask to talk to his crush, and like kind of like a Cyrano de Bergerac type thing here. And they bond over Percy Jackson novels, and Leo asks her to study. And you know what that means, John?
That they are going to study.
Yeah, you know what that means. So, Dad cooked dinner, and Leo eats lots of food. And Dad tries to fit in with the wrestling banter, but fails miserably. And this reminded me of a television show that no one has watched because I'm older than everyone, and that is The Flash television show from either late 80s or early 90s. One of my favorite parts of that show was that he always had to eat tons of food, like because he was just using so much energy that he constantly had to eat tons of food, which is a really cool detail that I don't know if it's in the comic books or not, but that's the same kind of deal. Although they set that up, that's the last time we hear about that, unfortunately. But they set up so many things, they can't keep them all in there. So, yeah. All right, John.
They eat a lot of spaghetti. Like he had spaghetti at lunch that he spilled on his crotch because he's a clumsy little kid. And then they had spaghetti at dinner here. And then the grandma starts eating the salad out of the bowl like a goat.
Yeah.
Like, I don't...
There's something missing, There's something missing in these scenes that would make it make more sense. So, all right. So our first round of tournament matches, we see Mia Yim, Keith Lee, and Samson and other NXT talent showcased. Leo bonds more with the Smooth Operator, right? And our first match for Kid Chaos is Kid Chaos versus Big Billy Beavers. Leo's dream is coming true, and he stands there and soaks it in, which is a really cool part of this, right?
Yeah.
But Billy is a cowboy character, and he has a lasso that can't be legal to use, but he decides to use it, right, John?
That's the first thing I thought of because Kid Chaos is taking the upper hand. And Big Billy Beaver, he decides, well, I'm going to, take his upper hand by lassoing him in the middle of this match. And the ref's like, I'll allow it. And so he literally lassos the child and starts throwing him around the ring with the rope until he works his way out and pulls a fast one over on Billy Beaver. What's he do?
Well, I was just thinking, if we go back and watch this again, if there even is a ref in the ring. There may not be a ref in the ring during this part. I don't know. But anyway, so let's say Billy uses his lasso. Bo uses his lasso, but it doesn't work on Kid Chaos. He runs along the top rope all the way around, tying up Billy, flipping elbow. Chaos gets the win.
What do you think of the finisher? Chaos.
I like it. It's like a fucking moonsault elbow. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and he does it like 600 feet in the air and then comes down. It's pretty dope.
Yeah, I like it too. It's pretty cool. So next we have at home. Leo has a study date, right? And she shows up unexpectedly, and he acts like a weirdo because he's trying to hide the mask. Grandma does some pop and lock dancing to try to Grandma's like the wingman. She's always trying to help everybody, even the dad. She's trying to set up situations where he can help, and she's like the MVP of this movie. Like, she's the one that's supportive. She's the one that's setting all this up. So she tries to distract, the crush from the fact that he's trying to put on the Kid Chaos mask and everything. And we get this weird variation on Cyrano where he's talking with the mask, but out of eye shot. But she just walks right up on him and puts the kibosh on that. And he's able to charm her without his mask.
Yeah. And this is where, cause he's like, oh, you need something to drink? And she's like, no, I already got water. It's fine. Do you need a water for your water? I'll get you one. And she walks in the kitchen. And she's like, oh, what's that smell?
Exactly. See, and it's funny. Yeah, she goes, I have my water here. And he goes, all right, one water coming up, which is when I used to work in a restaurant. And whenever servers were real busy, I would start pulling this shit on them, which I thought was so funny. I was such a dick. They'd walk up and say, all right, no ranch with that salad. And I'd be like, double ranch coming up, like that. They'd be like, no onions on that pizza. All right, so they want double onions? Sounds good. I'm putting them on right now. And it would just immediately freak out. And then they'd be like, oh, wait, it's you. Never mind. So that's good
I
stuff.
only am putting onions on this pizza.
holding the onions right away. So, all right, so we get our next match after that. Stinkface, which is Otis, versus Kid Chaos. This is a lot of fun. This is my favorite joke in the whole movie.
Of course it is.
Kid Chaos gets like kind of picked up for like a power bomb by Stinkface, and he asks him, he says, "Why are you so sweaty? The match just started." And Otis says, "Don't ask questions you don't want the answer to." That part's awesome, man. I love that. So we get gross out moves from Stinkface, who is Otis, and he does the worm, and then he performs a weaponized fart that sends Chaos flying. But Chaos is holding onto the ropes as like, this is a funny scene too, because the whole crowd is reacting to this fart. It like shakes the whole room. Tell me about this fart, John.
Well, I'm just gonna say I'm slightly shocked that you enjoyed this fart compared to other said movie, Doolittle, where you thought the fart was the worst part of the movie.
Well, in this movie, there's a character named Stinkface who smells, who is farting.
So,
he's established as gross. He's not a dragon that is having a rectal exam done by a doctor in a kid's movie. So it's a little different. John.
Yeah, so basically, Stinkface, his specialty is like a flatulent that sends shockwaves through the entire building. Like literally, there's waves of like you can see the fumes of this fart just like etching around the entire building, and everyone is just completely disgusted. But Kid Chaos isn't that disgusted because he's got a smelly mask already on, so it's kind of masking the smell.
Well, he kind of weathers the storm by just holding onto the ropes, but he's like flying in the air, just holding onto the ropes, right? And so when Otis stops farting, it creates a slingshot. So he just spears Otis. He goes for a pin, but then he's like, "Oh, this guy stinks." So he goes for the cocky pin with the foot on the chest and gets the win. I thought that was a lot of fun. I
did too. I mean, it was a one-move match, but, sometimes that's how the best matches are.
Well, John, how did you feel about the fart?
I literally saw it and was like, Andy's going to hate this part.
It makes sense. It's like and it's the tone is there for this, right? We've already had several stink jokes. And, and so one fart joke in a movie, if we're going to do it, might as well do it this way. I liked it. I thought it was cool. So,
yeah, I thought it did the job.
So next, well, Otis did the job, but Leo learns after this, the Smooth Operator has actually been wrestling for years and is facing Leo in the next round. And they're all like super babyface about it. Like, let the best man win. Sounds good, And so
I've been dreaming of this day my entire life for the last 10 years since I was a child. And Leo's like, yeah, me too, bro.
So Dad works on the car and Grandma gives him shit. Leo and Dad have an awkward conversation where like the dad's trying to connect, but as soon as Leo mentions the mom, he gets weird again, and he just wants to show Leo car stuff, but Leo has shit he's got to do. And then I just hear it doesn't play in the movie, but I hear the Cats in the Cradle just play in my mind. It just plays in my mind, So.
The little boy blue and the man on the moon.
If this was a like PG-13 or like a rated R movie, the dad would be fucking dead meat. He's got these unresolved things. I'm like, this dad is fucking dying any second. But because this is like a PG rated kids movie, that's not going to happen. So let's see here. So Leo and his friends eat, and the Crush. She's there too. They eat at the fakest diner I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this diner looks so fucking fake. Oh my God. It is clearly a set, and everything's like just sparkling clean. And it's just, it looks like when you go to like Disney World and you walk into one of the diners there, like that's what it looked like.
I mean, I've eaten at a lot of diners around the local Cincinnati tri-state area, and they all are sparkling clean like this.
Bullshit. Well, the bullies try to start some shit. but they puss out big time because the crush girl's like, hey, remember last time they fucked you up, bitches? And they're like, yeah, I guess so. I remember that. We were hanging by our underwear. I still got some stuck in my butt. I better get out of here. So that was fun. And then let's see here. Leo encourages his crush to enter a dance contest, like a talent show, and he promises to help. Very important.
Yeah, he'll be there.
Oh, definitely. So Kid Chaos stops a robbery during lunch, during their lunch, but by absolutely destroying the place. So remember I told it was all clean? So instead of just walking up behind the robber and like beating him up or like putting him in a headlock and twisting his head off or something, or doing a moonsault and elbowing him, he just picks up everything he can and starts throwing it at him. He throws him through a fucking window. He destroys the place, John. Destroys it.
And everyone is so thankful that he was there.
Yes! He gets interviewed on TV, and we cut to Ken Marino and Samson, who are on like a bus, like what do you call it, like an RV or something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's like where they live, I guess. And Samson is eating sticks of butter and punches a television and then slips on the butter wrapper. And this is my thought, John. I'm watching this scene. I'm thinking, why is this happening? This is fucking stupid. And then it's for a reason. And the reason's not a very good reason, but it is a reason. So, basically, Ken Marino's like, hey, turn the TV off there. So he punches the television. And Ken Marino's like, why you gotta destroy all my things? Which is funny. And he slips on a butter wrapper, and it gives Marino an idea. What'd you think of this scene, John?
I'm going to be 1,000% honest. I did not connect that with a later part until you just mentioned it. So
interesting. Well, it gives him an idea, which we'll follow up with here in a second, because the movie doesn't forget, John. You may forget, but the movie does not. So Dad and Grandma discuss Dad's shortcomings. He promises to be more supportive, and we learn that the mother left. We finally learn that the mother left. All right, she's not dead. We don't know if she changed sexual orientations. We don't know if she's a crackhead. We have no idea. She just left, and she has not called. So all the friends now know Leo's secret because he, put the mask on right in front of them and then trashed a fucking diner. And so,
sorry, guys, I should have told you earlier.
Yeah. So the crush says she prefers real Leo, and they agree to the dance thing. And Leo it has a cool montage where he kind of learns to dance, and we see that one little kid kind of tapping his toe a little more than the other one. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, I did. He was into it. He was afraid to be too into it, though.
Yeah. Now we get round 3, round 2. I don't remember. Round 3, I guess. Mia Yim is defeated by Samson, and the dad drives Lyft. Grandma encourages Leo to spend time with him.
Yeah, and he wants to spend time with him, but Dad is too closed off to, hearing any kind of interaction because Leo just wants to know where Mom's at.
Yeah, he won't shut up about his fucking mom. What a little bitch. So,
right, be grateful for who's in front of you. Your mom obviously didn't want you. She left.
Right. She wanted her crack. So, anyway, so Kid Chaos versus Smooth Operator, right? And Kid Chaos, we see Ken Marino. He puts lube on the ring steps, right? And so he does it right before Kid Chaos walks up. So Kid Chaos walks right through the lube, and that was his idea. He saw Samson fall down. He's like, wait a second. If this kid can't grip the mat, then he can't jump and he can't do all this stuff. It could have been a little more something in there that was a little more tailored to the situation, which would have been nice. But you didn't catch any of that, huh?
I guess I just didn't see what Frankie put on the steps. And so I just knew that something was on the steps, but I also didn't connect it back to the butter slip of Samson.
So the first time I watched this, I thought that he had put lube directly onto the shoes. Or I thought that he had drugged the kid. Because he acts like he's drugged.
Yeah, he does. It's very strange, how he starts acting.
Well, if you watch it again and you know what's going on, it makes a lot more sense. So you just gotta pay attention. I mean, this movie has details, John. We gotta fucking pay attention, It's
Yeah,
crazy.
details I wouldn't expect from a rated G movie.
I know, it's great. So Smooth almost wins with a splash, but Chaos adapts. He adapts to the situation because he's like having real problems wrestling, and everything. But he starts to adapt, right? He dodges a few clotheslines and hits a gorilla press on Smooth. Hits his finishing elbow, and Chaos wins, right?
Yeah, but you forgot to mention probably my favorite thing of the entire movie. So when Kid Chaos, he slips out of the ring and he flies out into the crowd, and then he registers like, oh my God, he put something on my shoes. And he's like trying to tell Smooth Operator, and he's trying to tell the ref like, hey, Frankie out here put some illegal objects on my shoes. And so the ref's counting out, and Frankie from the other side's like, ref, you already rang the bell. The match has to go on. There's nothing else we can do about this. And the ref's like, he's right. I rang the bell. It's got to keep going.
Throughout the whole movie, anytime Ken Marino's on screen, he's playing a heel manager to the fullest, and he does a great job. He's just talking shit to everybody. He's awesome. I love him in this movie. He's great. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, he gets the win, and Ken Marino's obviously not happy. But after the match, John, we get respect. Kid Chaos puts Smooth over on the mic.
Yeah, it's one of our favorite tropes in professional wrestling, where you beat your opponent, and then you decide, oh, I'm gonna put them over, even though I just beat them. So I'm gonna get on the mic and cut a promo.
That's right, babyface shit right there. So then the kids are walking around in a hallway, blatantly talking about how the mask is magic and the Chaos is just a kid. And Ken Marino walks out of an office and dodges a guy carrying a giant plate of like a tray of donuts. And he's like, donuts in there, to the guy who won't stop eating stuff. So, and he overhears everything they're saying. So he and it's great. The look on his face when he realizes it's magic. He's like, oh, magic, that thing that's real. Okay. It's awesome. And again,
he's not worried that it's a child. He's just worried about it being magic.
Yes. And again, this is like I was talking about with Star Trek The Next Generation, where they find a problem and everyone accepts it. Everyone accepts that this is magic. No one goes, magic, that's not real. They all just accept it, which I love that. You don't need to waste time on that bullshit in like a fairy tale type movie like this. So let's see here. So Ken Marino, he overhears it, and Leo has to do a press conference, but he promises to make it to the talent show, right? This leads to a pretty funny joke too. So Chaos talks trash to Samson at the pre-match press conference, which no one else got one of those. Why did they get one? I guess it's because it's the final or whatever.
Yeah, it's the main event.
That's right. So Samson and Marino plot. And another joke we didn't talk about with Samson is he doesn't talk. And there's jokes about this the whole time. So he's like, it reminds me of one of the characters in Hot Fuzz, the guy that just goes, darp, yarp. That guy, it's like that same joke. It's pretty funny.
I love Hot Fuzz.
That movie is long, and there's a lot in that movie too. The first time I watched it took me like 3 times to get through it, but it's a great movie. You're right. Let's see here. Okay, so everyone.
I wanted to point out at this press conference, Kid Chaos is starting to do some heel shit though, because he's now like overly cocky. He's trying to force a reaction out of his opponent by mocking them. So like he's starting to develop some heel tactics, even though he's supposed to be the face in this scenario, because he's getting a little big for his britches.
Well, he is, but I would argue he's been that cocky the whole time, is whenever he has the mask on. But you're right. This is all story stuff right here. So he's being a shithead, and like Samson gets mad and tries to attack him, and he just sits there and goes, yeah, fuck you. Kind of like he's Conor McGregor or something.
Yeah. He's just overly confident.
So now every character, except for the dad and all the wrestlers, are at the talent show, but Leo. Leo's not, right? And the Crush gets her performance pushed to the end by supportive, smart-ass teacher, but Leo is reveling in his success. And he's basically doing all this like press stuff. And there's a funny scene where he's given a promo in the ring, and the director like starts talking shit to one of his like subordinates, and he's like, "Did you see how he pointed there? That's how you point." That's pretty funny. Like little things like that in this movie are great, and those are the jokes for adults. That's really funny stuff. So that was good. And then the Crush, she starts her dance alone, all right, because he's not there. But one of the friends, the one that was tapping his toe, the little white kid, he gets up and performs it with her, and they tear the fucking house down to Run DMC's Tricky. What'd you think of this, John?
I loved how like downtrodden and sad she was when she had to do this dance by herself. And then when he shows up and she's like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And then he starts dancing and she like, and then her mood immediately changes. And now she's like, oh yeah, this is definitely like a great duo dance, until she like kicks him off stage and is like, okay, now I'm going to go into business for myself and finish this dance by myself. You just stand there and look at me.
If you had just watched the dance segment and nothing else in the movie, you would think it was a work, you know, that it was like part of the segment, that she's like, oh, I can't dance by myself. Well, who's this guy? I don't know you. Oh my God, we're dancing. You know, it would have been a cool little skit, you know? So I think that's what the crowd thought, and therefore they went nuts and it was bonkers. And that was fun. But guess what? Leo wasn't a part of that. He fucking was a dick. Right? So
yeah, he's too busy taking photos with all of his fans.
Right. So he shows up and they call him out. They're all pissed. They're like, what the fuck? You didn't show up. And he's like, no, I just couldn't get out of there in time. And they show him a video of himself saying, I will stay here until everyone gets a signature. It's really funny. I love this part. Do you like that, John?
Yeah, I love that the kid, the little Indian kid, had receipts like ready to go. Like, nah, dude, you're literally lying to us. We can see right here, because I have, hashtag Kid Chaos as like one of my ringing notifications.
That was funny. So let's see here. So Leo shows up. He gets beat up off screen by the bullies because now he's all woe is me, and that was weird because they track him down and he's like, guys, not now. And then they just cut to him at home. So I'm assuming they beat the shit out of him. They probably put like, I don't know, shoots under his toenails. They probably did like Indian burns. I mean, who knows what else they did to him, but we didn't see any of it. So
I would assume there was some waterboarding.
Yes, yes, definitely with beer. So, yeah. All right. So that was really funny. So Dad tries to help, but he gets fucking shown the door, and Grandma helps instead. Leo whines about how the mask should be able to fix everything, and she's kind of like, but you need to use your real powers, not the mask. So that's kind of our, we're starting to get to our third act here. And they're back at school. Leo's immediately forgiven by his friends because he says he's sorry.
I like that kind of level of forgiveness. Like, hey, you had a misstep. You did one thing bad. It wasn't the end of the world. I mean, you totally effed up the dance routine, but it's fine because, everyone still cheered for me. So sure, we'll forgive you.
I think that things would have been a little different if the one kid hadn't saved the day, and like all the fans at the talent show have been pissed and start throwing like rotten fruit at the girl, and she just had to run away scared. I think that would have changed things a little bit. But in this case, they were just like, yeah, we forgive you, and they're friends again, which is great. So come on back. So this is the smart mark section of the movie here, because we have Corey Graves and Renee Young calling the play-by-play for this, finals, and they are really funny. Did you catch this, John?
Yeah, I think Renee Young, it was like the opposite of what their normal commentating is. Like usually Renee Young is like the really chipper, good guy commentary, and Corey Graves is usually like the one that's downing everyone. And Corey Graves at one point's like, all right, we're going to have a great match here tonight in this 16-foot high steel cage. Everyone's going to be a good sport. And Renee Young's like, someone might die. Corey's like, wait, what? No one's going to die. I can promise you that. She's like, no, someone literally might die tonight.
Yeah, and he even tries to cut away, and he's like, well, tonight's going to be a great show. And she's like, especially if somebody dies. Silly thing, and you could tell they were having a lot of fun with that, so that was fun. That's pretty funny. Dad comes home to an empty house. Poor guy. He's worked all day. Comes home. He like bought Chinese. He's like, hey, I want to come see my family. Oh, you're not even here. So
he's here. No
yeah,
note, no nothing. There's
yeah,
like,
yeah. So Ken Marino and Samson switch the mask on Leo. They learn about the mask, but they come into the locker room and they're like, "Oh, we just want to shake hands and be good guys and everything." But what they do behind his back is switch the mask, right? So now, just like in Rookie of the Year, where his arm gets re-injured and it won't work anymore in the big game, this is what we got going on with Leo. So we got this cage match. Now, John, who is the guest referee and why?
We have a special guest referee in the form of Sheamus for no explained reason.
Yeah, and
Kofi Kingston has shown up, and he is with the Miz talking upstairs.
Yeah, they're in a private box watching, and Kofi is impressed, But Sheamus is the ref. He's a terrible ref because as soon as he realizes that it's a kid, he starts like trying to be like, don't beat up the kid, and then he gets beaten up, which is stupid. I don't know. But it's fine. I get it. The point of putting him in there is just to have a little bit of star power in this main event with a wrestler that is a WWE recognized wrestler for kids. So they can be like, that they have this discussion with their parents. Oh, I like all these guys. Are they real wrestlers? Like, well, no, but Sheamus is. Let's go watch a Sheamus match,
Yeah.
You should watch that one from SmackDown last week where he just defeated a jobber in the most pointless match of all time.
They're reestablishing his character.
It's fucking stupid, John. So Samson versus Kid Chaos. Like we said, Kofi watches. Chaos gets dominated because he can't do his shit, and he unmasks. And Corey Graves is like, oh my God, he's unmasked. What the hell?
And it's a child.
Yes, it's a child. That's pretty funny.
And unfortunately, the ring bell has already rang, and so there's nothing they can do to have this giant adult man fighting this small child. There's nothing they can do. The bell is all authority.
So Ken Marino, the manager's on the outside, all right, and he sees Samson pull out the mask because he pulls it out because he has it with him, and I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. Why did you bring it with you in the cage? So he has it in the cage, and when Kid Chaos sees it, realizes what's going on, and it's funny because he pulls it out, he tries to put it on, but he can't because his head's too big, right? Which kind of screws up the whole thing that we set up earlier about only good guys can use this mask. Doesn't really matter in the end. But he tries to put it on, and Ken Marino's like, yeah, put it on. Use your strength. And he can't put it on, so he chucks it on the ground, and he smells it and chucks it on the ground. Ken Marino's like, don't put it on the ground. He's like, what? Why would you put it on the ground? And he stomps on it, and Marino's like, don't stomp on it. What are you doing?
Throw it up high.
Yeah. So he throws it, and it gets stuck kind of at the top of the cage, one of the cage walls, just sitting there. So Sheamus stands up to Samson for some reason, but Samson hammer throws Leo near the mask, kind of like picks him up by the feet and just swings him around and throws him up there. So he's already there. He could just reach up and grab it, but he's a wrestler now, so he knows that you can't just do that. You got to build the drama, right?
Yeah.
So this is when Dad arrives. And there's some attempts at humor here where he jukes around security, which is not funny. But he sees his dad, right? And Leo does, and he remembers that thing about how all wrestlers have a weakness, right? And his dad reminds him. So it's just shoehorn the fuck in there,
Yeah, because by this point, Samson is chasing Leo up the cage to try and get the mask first himself. But he looks
unsure, right? So Samson can't climb because he's afraid of the heights. And it's funny because they call him out, and Ken Marino's like, heights? He loves heights. He's always talking about heights. He climbed Mount Everest last year. It's just really funny. Leo goads Samson into looking down, and he falls. Leo gets the mask, but decides to win without it. Elbow pin for the victory. Leo and his dad finally bond and share the truth about the mother.
Yeah, because he's like, Dad, why are you here? Why are you here, son? And then I am so glad they were able to finally, clear the air inside the WWE ring, in front of thousands of people. Just figure out why Mom left him.
It looked like it was about 100 people, But
well, it was televised on TV though.
It's true, millions and millions. So Miz says that Leo can't win though because he's 11. So he's like, I'm going to give my opportunity to somebody else. Smooth Operator gets the call instead. He sings. It's funny. Ken Marino, one last thing. This is like where the bad guy, you think he's dead, but he comes back one more time. Ken Marino tries to take the check. That's mine. I deserve that. And Grandma whoops his fucking ass. So that was cool.
She hits him with a super stiff clothesline and then knocks him out of the ring with a rear view.
That's pretty cool. And then let's see here. So Kofi looks down on all this. So we just see him for a second and you're thinking, oh, they're not. So Kofi's there. That's not going to mean anything, right? But Leo wrestles the bully without the mask. So, we see him doing amateur wrestling and he wrestles the bully without the mask. And then that's the credits, right?
It is. The show's over.
We get a mid-roll scene here in the credits. What happens here?
Kofi Kingston meets up with the whole gang, all 19 of them, while they're walking through the backstage area. And he says, hey, Kid Chaos, you did a great job out there. I think you're real swell. And then he sees Grandma and he's like, ooh, who's this sexy fox? I need to meet her. And Grandma is speechless for the first time in the entire movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I don't know if you noticed this, but they panned down for a second. There was just a puddle underneath her where she was standing, which I thought was a little too far. But, it was pretty funny because she really likes that. That was pretty great. So that's the end of the movie. John, tell me your overall thoughts. Anything that we missed? I mean, tell me about the main event.
I thought it was very enjoyable. Kind of like I said earlier, I think it's probably a good gateway into professional wrestling. Like a lot of families can watch this together and see like, oh, it's not always super violent, and there are fun characters. And, if you're going to introduce people into wrestling with someone like Kofi Kingston, I think that's a very easy way to get them into like a family friendly, that, adults get the humor and children get the humor maybe on a different wavelength. But I think it's a really good, family friendly movie that anyone can watch and be entertained, and it's free on Netflix. So, we're all looking for stuff to watch. Like, I'm 33 and I enjoyed this. So, I mean, anyone can really enjoy it. What about you?
That was great. I recommend this movie for sure for people of all ages. I think that, this could be the kind of show where everybody can, like this. Like I said, I think it's, we often bitch about WWE and other wrestling that it tries to appeal to a broad audience and misses. This one tries to appeal to a broad audience and just nails it. Just, hits it almost directly in the center. It's a really good movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. I laughed. I cried. I hurled. It was great.
Wow, you hurled. Yeah. That's like part of like your checklist of making a good movie?
It's a joke from Wayne's World. The Wayne's World posters would say, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll hurl. So I thought that was funny.
You hurl because you see Wayne like making out with this super hot chick and you're like, that's not believable.
Well, yeah, and by the way, he's got Laura Flynn Boyle chasing him, and she's the crazy girlfriend. I'm like, bitch, I don't care about Tia Carrera. I'll take Laura Flynn Boyle. I don't care how crazy she is.
Well, she's single, so.
Wayne. Anyway, well, John, anything else you want to say about this movie or anything else before we wrap it up here and wish everyone a happy Easter?
No, I don't think so, really. I mean, I'm disappointed that we aren't able to do any movies, together in a car at theaters. Well, that didn't make any sense. That sentence didn't. But yeah,
I don't. You sound like Yoda all of a sudden.
Hopefully someday we're gonna get to review My Spy, and I can't wait. We've literally been trying to review that for like a year and a half, but it keeps getting pushed back.
Maybe it'll be released for streaming, which I'm cool with that. I wish that the fucking price wasn't $20 though. A lot of these like new run movies are getting released on streaming now, and they're $20. Fuck
Yeah,
you.
I can tell you right now, I am not paying $20 to watch that movie.
No, that's ridiculous anyway. So, all right, folks. Well, you know where you can follow us, and I hope everybody out there has a great holiday. I hope everybody's staying safe and all that stuff and staying inside. So enjoy this. Maybe you can watch the movie and then, listen to the review, or other way around. Either way, you'll have a good time.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Sayonara.